Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and we are joined by a special guest. He is the owner and founder of Olympus AI. He is revolutionizing fitness, and you already know everything that we got going with Strive 11 Fitness on besides the Mindset Cafe. And both he and I are working together and trying to create a collab. So it's really cool. So I'm really excited. I don't want to give too much away with what Olympus AI is, but we have Eduardo Vitale on. Did I say your last name right?
That's right. Vitale.
Okay. Yep. I just want to make double check.
Yep.
But I'm so excited because the stuff that, with this collab and everything, it's going to really revolutionize not only everything that we got going on at Strive 11, but also the fitness industry and the personal development, side that we're so strongly about here at the Mindset Cafe. So I'm so happy to bring you on today, man. I'm excited. Thank you for coming on.
Oh man, thank you for having me. I'm super excited both for this podcast and the collaboration. Honestly, it's a super exciting opportunity to help kind of make fitness a little bit cooler and bring some new technology out there that hasn't really been seen yet in the fitness ecosystem.
No, that's awesome. So I don't want to give too much away because you can explain Olympus AI a lot better than I can. So let's start with there, right? What is Olympus AI?
Yeah, so essentially the idea behind Olympus AI was to solve what I think is one of the biggest problems in fitness, specifically when it comes to the gym. And that's essentially that millions of people every year are joining the gym, and 60% of those people within the first 6 months are quitting the gym. And that's a huge problem. And why is that the case? So when you think about that at face value, why that could be the case, it's actually pretty obvious. A lot of people are just simply losing motivation and not seeing the progress that they expected to, at least at the rate that they wanted. So the idea behind Olympus AI was to help alleviate this issue of losing motivation and not seeing the progress you want. And the best way to do that was that essentially we took a page out of Duolingo's book. So what did Duolingo do? They found a way to make learning languages, something everybody hated to do in high school, super fun by gamifying the experience along the way. So as you complete lessons, you get rewards, you get your streaks and everything that everybody loves, their badges and all that. But the problem doing that with fitness was essentially that the going to the gym is a physical experience that you have to digitize. And it's really hard to create a fun game-like environment if every time you go do a routine, you have to do the tedious process of going back into nap, writing down everything you do. It's error-prone, it's annoying, and it kind of takes away from the fun of it. So the premise of Olympus AI was to help remove that friction in as far as manually entering what you do in the real world in a digitized way. And the way that we do that is with our flagship product, which is the Olympus Pod. So this is an example of an Olympus Pod. And the Olympus Pod is a magnetic attachment that you can attach to gym equipment or to your wrist, depending on the exercise you're doing. And it will essentially track everything that you do in the gym, including your reps, your sets, your rest time, the calories you burned, as well as the weight that you're doing in real time. And the idea behind this is that because you can now walk into a gym and automatically track all the stuff that you're doing, you can get this Duolingo-like experience where you're getting badges and rewards along the way. And that'll help people stay motivated in the gym, and hopefully with the goal of alleviating this problem of everybody quitting the gym essentially as soon as they join because they're just not seeing what they expect. So that was the idea behind Olympus, and that's how we attempt to solve it.
No, see, that's so cool. And we were talking, on another call, with the whole collaboration and everything, because with Strive, you already know how we're kind of doing things a different way and going against the grain from the traditional boot camp model. And one of the things that I thought we intertwined so well on was the fact that it has to be gamified, right? We have the My Zone belts, we have, different challenges that, most gyms charge for every challenge that you're a part of. Well, 3 of our challenges you don't even have to pay for them, right? Only one of them you do if you want to do it. But it's like the whole gamified experience, not just in today's world, but in any time in history, if you can make something a game, people are a lot more willing to at least try it, to at least stick with it, and then they stay way more engaged. And with today's, society, if there's not engagement, like there's so many distractions going on in the world, so many other things that are going to catch your attention that, you're gonna end up switching, right, or losing focus. So with Olympus and everything, I thought it was so cool because even though for our model, you don't necessarily have to count reps, it's cooler to see. And like honestly, like I was talking to my wife about it too. Like this is how cool the thing was. Like, you met Nick, my business partner and stuff. But before we had opened the gym, right? We were doing Strive 11 in like our driveway during COVID, right? And during that time, I bought an Apple Watch, right? I'm a watch guy, like, and I don't mean fancy watches. Like, I just like wearing different watches on my wrist. And so I bought an Apple Watch, but it was only for the fact of when we were doing Strive 11 on the driveway with like the roommates and like other people before we got married and stuff. It was like me and a couple of other guys would be like, how many push-ups did you get in the 2 minutes? Right. And so we were competing on every station, as well as how many calories did you burn? Right. And that whole aspect makes it a lot more fun. And you're trying to push yourself to not only do better than you did the set before, but also, maybe people around you. So it took me back to that moment before everything started getting as big as it is now. And I was like, this is the one thing I didn't even think about when we opened the gym, right? This is that one area that I was like, we're missing. And so with Olympus, I think it's so cool that now people can track their heart rates, track everything like that. And now it can be tailored to not just when they're working out in the gym, they can do it wherever they want because they have the Olympus app that basically has all the stations and everything already intertwined in it. I think it's so cool. So what was that first realization for you that gamifying fitness was going to be a unique concept?
Yeah, actually, I know exactly when that was. So I'm Olympus AI is a startup, right? So as a startup, you kind of go through a lot of stages of the startup, and one of them is the incubator phase, where you're learning essentially how to run a startup as someone that's never done it before. So I did the Venture Miami incubator, and in that incubator program, they encourage us to test your product, because when you have anything that is going to be a startup, the idea is that you have to fail fast. So you have to test concepts super quickly to make sure that they're the right concept, because you don't want to spend 6 months developing something just to find out it hits market and the market doesn't want this, right? So that's what they taught us to do. So in the program, there was about 50 startups. They said, well, try and convince other people in the program to use your product. And if you can't find anyone out of these 50 startups and the people that work for them that's interested in your product, either you have a super niche market or you need to retailer your approach. So when I first started Olympus, the actual idea behind Olympus was it was supposed to be your ultimate workout log, the ultimate fitness tracker. And I thought on its own, that would be something that the market would really be interested in, because that's what myself in particular was interested in. So I built this thing to automatically track the stuff that I do. And the story behind that was, like, for example, when I would do the bench press, I tried to do it with the goal of, I want to do 250 reps. Doesn't matter how much weight I do, I have to get through 250 reps. And I was just putting them on the calculator and I was forgetting where I was. And I was like, okay, well, I can fix this if I just attach something that automatically tracks this for me. I was like, okay, well, I've solved my problem. So then fast forward to the incubator, and I think I've solved this incredible problem. But then it turns out that the people who were most excited to try my product, because at the incubator, you would essentially pitch your product to everyone there and see who would be interested. And I had a ton of people interested, but not for the reasons I essentially expected. Everyone that came up to me that wanted an Olympus Pod were people who said, and this exact quote, and they weren't talking with each other beforehand, so they independently arrived at this essentially same quote. They're like, this looks like so much fun. This is going to get me back into the gym. Or this looks like so much fun. This is going to make me consistent in the gym. This looks like so much fun. Insert whatever it is as far as maintaining a fitness routine. And it became clear to me that the Olympus Pod is a way to help people make the idea of going to the gym cool and techy. And then I can add this extra layer of gamification to it that will hook them. So that's kind of the idea. It's like, when you have a new piece of technology, people are super fascinated with it and they want to go try it out immediately. And you have to have a way to keep them around once they do that. Because essentially, if you're giving them their ultimate workout tracker, they're going to think it's cool for the 2 or 3 times that they go to the gym. But if they're quitting the gym, then the pod isn't doing its job. They're just still quitting the gym. So it transformed into this fact that essentially, if they're approaching my product as something that looks like fun rather than the ultimate workout tracker, then my app needs to be something fun rather than the ultimate workout tracker. So that's how I kind of arrived at this whole gamification idea. Because overarchingly, the premise of Olympus was not supposed to be directly to consumers. The long-term goal actually of Olympus is that it's supposed to be not a standalone app, but rather a service that gyms can simply subscribe to, where if you want to have an Olympus Pod live on all of your equipment in the gym, you simply pay as a gym $200 a month. We'll send you 100 Olympus Pods in your branding and logo. It just lives on your equipment. And then if your gym has an app, essentially we could just integrate our stuff into your app, and then all of your clients can just walk up to gym equipment, and we'll live in a world where all equipment, no matter how old it is, can just be transformed into smart equipment that you can automatically walk up to, and then it'll start tracking your routine. But even though this was the original premise of Olympus, it still failed to address the main issue in fitness, that no matter how cool the equipment is, no matter how techy it is, people are still quitting because they're not, no matter how cool the equipment is, that doesn't make you love what you see in the mirror or see the progress that you're expecting at the rate that you are. That's just not how people function, and that's completely normal. So I had to find some kind of synergetic way to combine fun, like the long-term stickiness of an app, which is the gamification, with the upfront cool that people kind of perceive it as, which is this piece of technology, and then tie that into the broader ecosystem of, well, how do I make this work for every gym on every piece of equipment without everyone having to buy new pieces of equipment? And that's kind of the idea. It's that you have to make a solution for a problem in the market sticky, cool, and easily scalable. And that's what Olympus tries to do by being in all the gyms, having the gamification, and then having this like hook of, look, this is a new piece of technology. It's a magnet and it tracks your stuff. So that's kind of like how I arrived at where I am.
No, so that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, believe me, there's some cool equipment out there, like gym equipment. And I probably like yourself, if I go into a new gym and I haven't seen equipment today, like that it's new, and I'm like, damn, that's a different take on it. Even though it might not even be the muscle group I'm hitting, I was like, I got to try it,
Right.
And then, I mean, I was in Utah, and that happened. I was going to the gym to basically set up for a Strive 11 workout for this networking group. And so I had to see what they had there and plan it all out. And I was like, oh, I've only seen this one online, or, oh, dude, so I spent an hour doing basically a full body workout unintentionally just to try all this new random equipment. And then I was like, oh man, I didn't even set up anything for today's workout. So, but that doesn't happen for everyone, right? The whole aspect behind Olympus is cool because it's like, it takes the learning aspect, like Duolingo, like you said, and it intertwines the gamified experience. So like some of the samples that you were sending me, for the Strive 11 stuff, like it tells people too, or it can tell people too what they're doing, right? So it's not just like you can input your own exercises if you have your own routine and stuff like that. But the cool thing is, like, most people don't know what to do, right? And that's where I think a lot of the lost sheep happen, is because one, a personal trainer is expensive, right? As we both know. And that's why I Strive, because it's like a boot camp trainer blended together. And so now with Olympus intertwined into that, it's taking that aspect and furthering it even more down the line. And I think that's what's so awesome about it. So with your background though, because I know not only are you the founder and the CEO, but you're also the creator and engineer of the app and stuff like that. So what's your background in all that? Like, how did you get interested in, becoming an engineer and an app, developer and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I guess it's maybe a little unconventional. Maybe it's more normal nowadays, but essentially I went to university for economics, and then I graduated and I got a job in finance, and I hated it. It wasn't very exciting because essentially, like, what I like to do is create. And in finance, you aren't really creating much. You have the opportunity to make a lot of money, but that's not very exciting if it's soulless. At least that was my point of view. So I decided that I would teach myself how to code. So after 6 months of this finance job, the latter 3 months of it, I was just spending every day going back home after work just to study coding. And then I got my first job. I worked for WeWork as an engineer. That was my first coding job after I left the finance role. And then iteratively from there, I was working throughout the years. Like, for example, the year following that, so this was 2019, I changed jobs 4 times to keep on up, because like I would just study every night to learn like the next skill level in like, I guess, my engineering pursuit. So for example, like in data science, right? You essentially, you can start as a data analyst, which is what I did. And then I went to become a data engineer. And then the next thing is a data scientist. So I would just iteratively be studying whatever was required for that next role. So right now, for example, I have a full-time job as a data scientist. But that's how I fund Olympus, aside from like the marginal revenue that we make. But essentially that's how I arrived there. So when it came to making Olympus, though, it was a little different because essentially what I do for a living is that I build AI for companies, right? And that has absolutely no overlap in building mobile apps and has absolutely no overlap in building physical hardware. So I had to, again, do the same thing where I taught myself how to do all the stuff on hardware. I bought the 3D printer, like for example, my 3D printer is right here, and I use this to like print out the prototypes and all that. And then I learned how to manufacture all this by hand myself so that essentially I could bootstrap the company. Because essentially, if you want to build a physical device for like the toughest startups are ones that have physical hardware. That's generally known that's the hardest kind of startup to make because you're competing with tech giants really at that point, right? So it's like, how do I essentially beat someone like Fitbit? Well, I have to find a more niche market and I have to be less expensive. So that's how I approached this problem. And in order to be more niche, that's something you kind of just arrive at by like, doing your market research. But how do you be cheaper is that you have to build it on your own. So for example, if I wanted to contract out someone to build the equivalent of the Olympus Pod, that's like a $50,000 to $100,000 endeavor. Like you have to pay a studio to make all that stuff. And I just could not afford that. So I was like, I'm going to learn myself how to do it. Now, does that slow down the startup timeline? Yes. But at the same time, someone might take the route where they go try and raise a round of equity. They sell a portion of their company. Then they pay for a design studio to do whatever. They've lost equity. Let's say the design studio does not meet what they need. So now they own less of their company. They're out all this investor money. And they've lost essentially, and I'm not recommending that everyone go build every aspect of their technology. I don't think that's necessarily feasible. But like there is a reality to it that if you're building the product yourself, you have a more intimate understanding of what needs to be done in order to improve it. So for example, I had to test a lot of different iterations as far as like the shape of these pods and how to make them the size that I do and all that. That's not that level of like iteration you just can't do when you're working with like a studio or a dev shop, right? So I had to learn how to do that myself. So that, and then mobile app development was the other aspect of it that I had no idea how to do. So for a year, I essentially ate that and I paid the price. I paid a mobile dev shop to make a lot of the stuff in the app. So I built the skeleton of the app and I said, here, can you make this pretty and add some of these cooler features to make it look clean? Because I just wasn't familiar with that. But now over that year, essentially what was happening was that there was a lot of bugs in the code that they were writing. And I had to fix those bugs because otherwise I had to pay them to fix it, which was super aggravating. You would expect that it'd be done on the first time, but also this is not how life works. So I was fixing the bugs myself. So I've also now learned how to do a pretty decent amount of mobile app development. So now I can save all of the money that essentially is the spare income from my job for marketing for Olympus. And that's generally how I arrived at where I'm at today.
No, that's awesome, man. And I think that it's so cool because not only, I mean, because I've had people that I've known that, wanted to create supplement companies and other things, not just even in the like tech space, but anything that you're doing that's product based, right? Let's say even a t-shirt company, right? You have to invest a lot in overhead, or at least a lot in startup, right? Not even in overhead, but a lot in startup just to get the product. And you don't even know if it's going to sell or do anything or look exactly the way you want it, right? And so one of the things I knew with the product that he was selling for the supplement is like he could only have one product, right? Because it was expensive. He had to buy 50,000 units. And I was like, I got a question, where are you holding 50,000 pre-workouts? And they weren't small tubs either. They're like these like taller tubs. 50, and he was, and he's like, well, it takes up one of my rooms at my house. And I was like, dude, I know your wife is not happy right now. And, so it's like learning, it's not easy to do what you've done in the aspect of one, being self-taught, right? Because you've not only taught yourself a lot of these things, but also realizing that you can save money and learn more about the company and have more of an intimate relationship with your company if you do a lot of the things yourself, and then as you grow, you know, bring people on, right? And that then when you bring people on, you're bringing people on that are better than you at that given thing, but at least you understand the basis of it. And like the closest relation I can tell you with that for myself would be like marketing. We've hired marketers, but before that, I taught myself marketing. I've read probably 20 books on marketing. Like I've studied it. And so like when we hired our first marketing company and they're telling us that, oh, we're doing split testing and this and that and A and B testing, I was like, okay, A and B testing is split testing. So I don't know why you said that, like those two different things, but I didn't say anything, you know, and then they're like, you know, so then they tell me all these things and I go into like the Facebook ads and I was like, you guys haven't done any of that. Like I'm looking at it right now. And then,
Yeah, it's
you
so
know,
annoying, I know.
so now when you bring someone on your team or something and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this, you could at any point oversee it and be like, no, you're not. Like you're just, you know, twiddling your thumbs, you know, right now and just telling me that it's taking a while. Right. So I think that's a really cool aspect that
Yeah.
you've taken, and to teach yourself things, it could be frustrating, right? It could be a lot harder than people anticipate, and that's what separates, you know, the average from the good and the good from the great, right? That's where there's levels to this game. And so I wanted to ask, what are some of the maybe the biggest lessons you've learned thus far about entrepreneurship from building Olympus AI?
I would say that the biggest I learned my biggest lesson a few years ago, and it was essentially this. So I'm 28 now. I had the idea for Olympus AI at 24. My first iteration of Olympus AI, I essentially this is, I guess, the backstory. It was during COVID, and essentially I had gotten laid off from my job because everybody did, right? During COVID, I was working for a travel-based startup during COVID, so obviously that's a disaster. The company went out of business entirely, but essentially they gave me my severance, and I had some savings, and I put all my money in the stock market, and the stock market popped off, and I was able to not have a job for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022 or 2021, right? So those 2 years, because I was blessed to have done well in the stock market because of the COVID market, right? So that's how that happened. So that's how I was able to start Olympus the first time around. But essentially, the problem was that I was 23 and I had a chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to prove to myself that I'm intelligent. That's essentially what I was trying to prove to myself, that I'm smart and that I could do anything. And that's not what you need to approach a business with. You can't approach it with hubris, like in a way that this is yours. You can't treat a business like it's like your self-actualization. You have to treat a business as something that needs to work and function beyond you. So essentially the problem was that because I was using Olympus as a medium to prove to myself how smart I felt I was trying to build everything on my own at first. And the problem with that is that a startup needs a CEO, not an engineer. And I was acting like an engineer when my company needed a CEO. So what I was doing was I was trying to build everything myself, and not doing everything half-assed, but just doing everything that someone who's spread out super thin would do. And I've learned now that I'm older, because essentially what happened that first time around was because I was doing it all myself. I was spending money left and right doing all these marketing things and making mistakes just that I should not have been making. And essentially I had gotten one client in Miami, and they paid me $17,000 to set up the original version of Olympus, which was cameras. Now they're pods. But they wanted so many changes to the mobile app that I had to spend all the money they gave me, plus more, to pay developers to make these changes iteratively. So the two lessons that I learned from this were, one, you need to, when you're starting a business, you need to kind of put yourself aside and focus on the goal at hand, which is, if you're making a business, this is not about you trying to prove how smart you are. That's the first lesson. And then the second one is that if you have a client, that's important. Do everything you can to keep that client, but don't do it at the sacrifice of your business. And what I did was essentially I spent all my money on changing this mobile app because I didn't know how to do it myself at the time. And I ran out of money because I wanted to make it work. And that was, I think, two mistakes that I made because I was younger and more foolish. So I lost all my money, right? So I had to like move back in with my mom and all that. And then I got a job again, and then I started back up. But like, I couldn't even afford rent. I went all in on it the first time around because I was 25 and dumb and just, I was like, this is gung-ho about it. I'm 28 now, not to say that I'm old and wise, but like I've definitely learned a lot of lessons along the way about, essentially maintaining your composure in the face of opportunity, because sometimes if you have an opportunity in front of you, you will jump the gun a little bit and you will make mistakes. And I've done a better job, I think, now as an older individual in my later 20s, as not jumping the gun at every opportunity, and also like humbling myself. Like, it's not about me, it's about making this business work. So I think those are the two biggest lessons. And also like losing all your money and having to move back home after it, like that's, it's a very humbling experience. Like you realize who you are. You're not Superman. And when you're young and 23 and you think you could do everything, you do, in a sense. So being humbled in those lessons, I think in combination, is probably helped me arrive to where I'm at now.
No, see, that's awesome. And I think some lessons you have to learn yourself, right? Because I know you said you were part of that incubator and stuff. And if someone in there had told you, don't go in all in or do this and that, you would have still probably taken it with a grain of salt. But at least I could speak from personal experience that, sometimes us creatives are like, it'll work, we'll figure out a way, it'll work. And that's something that I think that's a huge lesson that you learned. And I feel like most people do have to learn it that hard way, where it's like, you can't adapt your business to a person. You also have to realize sometimes you have to fire, even if it is your best client, to make sure that you stay online with your goal. Yeah. And it's a hard thing to do. But at the end of the day, like, the best way I can describe it is like, your business isn't going to be for everyone. And that's okay, right? Like, you have to realize that you have a market and you have a clientele that you're going to resonate with. And then you do have clients that you will not resonate with. Like, Strive 11 does not resonate with powerlifters, right? It just doesn't, unless they're trying to do conditioning and stuff like that in between. Like, we're not a powerlifting gym. Yep. Right. Yep. If you want to do bodybuilding, like, we could help you with the cutting aspect, but we're not going to be blowing you up and, talking about gear and all the other stuff. Like, that's just not our gym. Right. So you have to realize where you're at, who your quote unquote blue ocean is, and really stick with that. So I think that's awesome that you did learn it. I mean, believe me, we're not too different in our life paths. 24 is right around the time I started having the ideas for Strive 11, testing it out and all that kind of stuff. And then I think it was 28 actually when I really started like diving into the model. And then like by 29, we opened up the gym. So we're very, very similar on that path, right?
Cool. Yeah.
So something I do want to ask though, like diving back into Olympus and everything, what helps, like we talked about the gamification and everything, but what helps, basically keep someone motivated or keep someone consistent? It's like I know, for example, I've done Duolingo and stuff, and you get those little app bumps, like the push notifications and so forth. But what really keeps someone motivated or consistent with Olympus?
So essentially, the idea behind what keeps people motivated is that there's this, it's like essentially an economic theory, or like behavioral economics, which everyone is very familiar with this if you've ever even been to a casino. It's that like, you are more afraid to lose something than you are happy to gain something. So you'll be super happy that your streak has gone up by a little bit or whatever it may be. But you will be devastated if you if you lose your streaks, right? This is the idea here. So essentially the idea behind Olympus is that we have to make a balance of this, because we can't make people like constantly stress out that they're always losing like their progress or whatever. But you have to find a way to essentially balance showing people that they have made progress while also keeping them consistent, to say that if you are not consistent, you will lose said progress. So the way that Olympus does that is essentially, of course, with a streak counter. And the other way is that essentially we have these series of badges that as you progress through your, like any aspect of the gym, we're essentially gamifying that. So we're gamifying your PRs, we're gamifying your total calories, we're gamifying the number of exercises you do. Every single aspect that we can track in a gym, we're gamifying. And the idea is that essentially that you can lose your progress towards your goal if you're not consistent towards it. So for example, this is a feature that I was debating adding to the app or not, but I think essentially this would help put a little bit of fire under people and help keep them consistent, is that in Duolingo, if you don't touch Duolingo for a month, you actually keep all your rewards and all that. And then you can kind of like hop back on the lesson. But that's okay, because in terms of learning a language, a 1 month break is not as big if you're taking like a 1 month break in fitness. So the idea is that I wasn't entirely sure where to set this, because this is kind of just part of the entrepreneurial journey and like figuring out what customers are receptive to. But essentially, that if you don't work out for a certain amount of time, you start to lose your progress or like your rewards along the way. And then in addition to that, you will also find a way. We found a way to like essentially gamify the rewards in the app, so that, for example, if you have a new badge and you've succeeded in this, you earn a rest day. So essentially, like the way the app works right now is that like you have to work out, say 7 days in a week. You work out 5 days, you earn a rest day, and that way people have to earn their rest days, and that way if they don't work out and they don't stay consistent, they lose their streak, while also being understanding that someone cannot work out every day. And it's kind of finding the balance between the accomplishments and tying some kind of value to that accomplishment, to where you can like allow them to like ease off the pedal just enough for them not to get burned out, but enough so that they still stay consistent. And I think that's what I'm trying to figure out with Olympus. It's less of a technology problem and more of a psychology problem. And that's kind of something that you have to do trial and error for, because there's not really any example in fitness right now where they've tried this kind of like bait and carrot, where they're trying to keep people consistent by using X motivator. At least not to my knowledge, or any large scale studies. So that's what we're trying to figure out. And that's some of the ways that we're tinkering with that formula, beyond maybe what Duolingo does. So that, I think that's how we're approaching it. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's awesome. And I, as you said that, I have a couple ideas we'll talk about afterwards. But you might already be doing them, but you know, it kind of answering into those questions. And it also I wanted to see, it reminded me of a question that I had, you know, after our last conversation. So, you know, I don't want to put it on the air and then, you know, it not be something, or it be something, but keep it under wraps, so that, you know, if it is something that we can drop it as the collab drops. But with that, like, I want to intertwine it into the other aspects, right? Because let's say, like you said, not everyone can work out, you know, 7 days in a week, right? So I think earning a rest day and that stuff, similar to like Duolingo has their freezes, right? Exactly. And so I think that's really important. Are you, or I know you are, but I want to kind of explain that a little bit more to people too. Like, when you're talking about working out 7 days in a week, right? If you are working out, let's say 7 days in a week, because you do need a rest day. But I think people have the misconception with rest days as like just a couch and potato day where they're just literally sitting there not doing anything, versus your rest day could still be a physically active day, maybe going on a hike or doing something else of that nature. Now, does Olympus AI really track any of those kind of things? Because I know something that you sent me or told me, you know, right, the video and stuff that you're trying to create where they can snap a picture. So
yeah,
switching up, like, let's say someone's normal workout is weightlifting, right? And then their quote unquote rest day, or let's say they don't want to work out 7 days in a week, and on their 5th day, they want to just do cardio. That's okay. That technically is still a rest day from weightlifting, right? So what is that aspect in how you're integrating AI into Olympus?
Yeah, that's so that brings up a great point. So yeah, essentially, so I guess I'll explain the feature first, and then I guess I'll explain how that maybe ties in, because I'm also like figuring out how it ties into the psychology too. But essentially, right now, in Olympus, I'm almost done integrating this into the app, is that right now a lot of people, they go to a lot of people that were asking about the Olympus Pod and what it could do, they were like, well, does it work for cardio? And it didn't, right? Because essentially it's a movement tracker and it tracks your reps and sets. So I needed to figure out a way how to incorporate cardio into the app, because this is a fundamental part of a lot of people's fitness. For some people, it's their entirety of their fitness, right? So how did I do that? Essentially, the idea now is that Olympus, for cardio equipment, you can just snap a photo of what you did on the treadmill, elliptical, stationary bike, or Stairmaster, and the photo will be analyzed by Olympus AI, and our AI is called Zeus. And Zeus will just figure out the number of steps you did, the duration, the distance, and the calories, and it'll save that to your phone automatically. That way you don't have to have a separate app. You could just snap the photo and you don't have to enter it manually. And this allows people to now add this component of their workout that is cardio. So for example, it won't work like if you're like going for a run, like outdoors, and all that, because essentially there's other ways to track that, which eventually will integrate into the app. But as far as like trying to like dominate the fitness space inside a gym, the cardio equipment is a huge portion of people's workouts. So by snapping this photo, you can now track all of your stuff in that regard. Did that answer the question?
No, yeah, definitely. So, and I think that it could possibly even still work like that too. If someone did go on a run outside without having to integrate straight into another app, like if someone just snapped a picture of their Apple Watch or something like that still has the breakdown.
They could totally do that too. Yeah. 100%.
Right. So I thought that was super cool too, is like already having like, because now let's say if you're like, man, my schedule is only weightlifting 3 days, then cardio, then 3 days or so forth. It's like, that's fine. Like, you could snap a picture and have it read and basically still count as a workout day, and also have Olympus, tracking those cardio days. Like, look, last time you only ran a mile, this time.
Right. So right now, the minimum that I'm using in Olympus for a workout day is that you have to have done at least one exercise for 30 minutes. So in theory, this cardio would totally constitute an exercise. So like they wouldn't, as far as I'm approaching it to the market, maybe the market will react differently. I would give them the streak for that day. If they're going to do a run for 30 minutes, I count that as being physically active. You know what I mean? So I would give it to them. It's like, if you really don't do anything, which is okay. Like, at some days you're exhausted, or your schedule just doesn't allow for it. I think you should be able to get a pass. And that's more the idea behind it. Not like purposely, like, I'm going to turn into a potato today. You know what I mean? Like,
right. No, that's where I was going with it. Like, if let's say if you wanted to work out 2 days, then have just a cardio day, but you're worried about your streak ending, I was like, this is a way to, like, you're still working out. So it's still going towards the streak. And then you could also see those logs and stuff like that. So when next time you do go for a run on your quote unquote cardio day, you can see what it was and try to beat your last one. So basically gamifying the experience. So I think that's super cool, man. And honestly, I'm really excited to do a lot of the stuff that we're going to do together, because I know we'll work it out and we'll make it fit and stuff. And I did see a lot of the stuff that you had sent me over, and it's already looking really cool. So I'm excited. But before we do wrap up, and before we do where people can find you and stuff at, I want to ask you basically one question, right? And the question is, this is Eduardo's legacy wall, right? It's not a tombstone, it's a legacy wall. On this legacy wall, you can leave any message. It could be for coders, it could be for entrepreneurs, it could just be for, the up and coming generations. But what would that one lasting message be that you've learned along your journey?
I would say all right, this is going to go more towards, it's not so much the fitness space, it's more towards entrepreneurs and people that might be in a similar position to myself. When you are starting a company and you're jumping into the deep end and you're very scared of what's to come and you don't know what's going to come, I have found that true ambition is almost like a mental illness. It wakes up with you every morning, like essentially like a depression does. You cannot get rid of it, and it eats away at you during the day like anxiety does. And you're not wrong for feeling that way. You're not on the wrong path for feeling these things. It's your ability to work through them that will determine your success. And it's okay to be open and vulnerable with people when you are going through these things, because it will feel lonely a lot. You will feel like other people don't understand what it is that you're going through, and they're not going to understand why you might be feeling the things that you do. And that's okay. A lot of us feel that way, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to make your dreams come true except for you. So work through those things. Know you're not alone in them, and know that that doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It probably means that you're on the right path.
100%. And I think that's so true. And as entrepreneurs in general, like, it can be a lonely journey if you make it, right? And so connecting with other people, other like-minded individuals, you realize that you're not the only one that feels like that. You're not the only one that is going through those ups and downs. That is part of the admission to being an entrepreneur. But, that's one of the reasons why we did create the Mindset Cafe, as well as in, having these interactions with people like yourself and showing people that it is like this for everyone, right? But it's worth it. And having that, when you wake up and you feel that almost not depression, but you feel that weight, of trying to get things going, right? That's because you have a purpose. that's because you know and you have a desire and a passion for something that hasn't taken off yet. So I think that's so awesome. That's the first time someone has dropped that as a legacy quote. So I think that's so awesome, man. Where can people connect with you and learn more about Olympus? You know, obviously before the collab, where we're going to be shouting it out everywhere, but where can people learn about it now?
Yeah, for sure. I would say like the main source of Olympus information would be our website and our Instagram. So our Instagram is olympus.ai.fitness and our website is olympusai.fitness.
Cool. And then that will be in the show notes, guys. If you guys want to check it out now, believe me, it is awesome. And, you know, that's why I'm super excited for this all to be coming to fruition in 2025. So Eduardo, thank you so much, man, for taking the time. Guys, make sure that you guys, you know, share this episode with a friend. If you guys know someone else that's been struggling with their fitness journey, make sure you really share this with them, because this Olympus AI might be the thing that really helps them create their 2025 New Year's resolution and really make it happen this year. So Eduardo, man, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you again, man. I appreciate it.
Vibes, only positive thoughts, just in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to be slack.